This tutorial is going to cover how to make a design that would have an applique added to it. So I'm going to first use my Instant Designer here, which is my action illustrated tool that is designed to work with our vector clip art. If I click on the template browser, I can keyword search through my vector clip art images. Go ahead and search for paw. Pulls up all my different paw prints. I'm going to click on cat paw 1 and hit open. So in order to do an applique, what this will be, it'll be like an actual physical material applique with a nice steel stitch border around the applique. In order to achieve that, I do need to make several different layers of this one vector design. So we're going to go ahead and go into our object manager. Right now we see we have layer 1 with these different objects on it. So let's go ahead and make sure that first of all these are laid out in an efficient way. So if I click on the bottom one first, it's the big shape here. I can click my way through here and see it's moving through the toes. Felt like the last two were out of order, so I'm just going to drag this down. So now it'll start at the bottom paw print shape, and then it will go from toe to toe in an efficient manner. So I need actually 3 of these in order to make a design with an applique. So I'm going to go ahead and make 3 different layers just to make everything really clean and simple. So right here at the bottom I can click on this, which will make a new layer. Layer 2 is the name, that's just fine by me. I'm going to go ahead and take all of these and just come to Edit, Copy, go into Layer 2, Edit, Paste. Come down here, let's add a 3rd layer, Layer 3, Edit, Paste. So now I have 3 layers with 3 paw prints, 1 paw print in each layer. So the bottom design, the first thing that's going to stitch out is we're going to convert it to a run stitch. It's going to be our tracing stitch. I'm going to go ahead and select all of those. We're going to go ahead and then click on Run Stitch. I'm going to go ahead and make those a pink color so we can see those nicely. And then while I have them all selected, I can also go to the Action Apps Auto Start Stop. So this has now made it a very efficient way to add a run stitch onto each of these. So this is just going to quickly do a run stitch on my sweatshirt in the shape of a paw print. Next we need to add a stop. In order to do that, I'm just going to take my Bezier curve and I'm going to go straight up from my object. So if I click once here, hold down Control and click several inches up here, it put it into my 3rd layer. Let's go ahead and pull it down into my 1st layer. So this is what we're going to do with this is make our machine stopped after the tracing stitch and bring our hoop towards us so we have room and time to place the applique material on top of our tracing stitch. So it's right here. I'm actually going to go ahead and convert it into a run stitch. Now let's come over to my Action Apps Object Properties, because a run stitch is actually sewn. We don't want that. So we're going to change it to a needle up. Let's go ahead and hit Apply. So now it's like my paw will stitch out, then my needle will stop stitching, go to here and move up without stitching anything. Also, we needed to go ahead and stop at the end of this. So first let's make sure with our Beads Edit tool that it's starting here, which we want, and it's stopping here. So that's perfect. That's the direction we want to go. Now we just need to add a stop to it. So I'm going to go to Commands, and I don't need a start command, but a stop command. Let's go ahead and add a stop and hit Apply. And it adds a big red dot at the end of this. So what my machine will do is stitch out a paw print in a single run stitch, and then it's going to physically move my design, my hoop, closer to me and stop, thus giving me time to lay down my applique material. So let's come back to the Object Manager. Layer 2 here. This is going to be a tacking. This is going to become our tacking stitch, which is actually just going to tack down our material before applying the decorative steel stitch. So I have my different paw prints here. I'm just going to go ahead And it's best for the tacking stitch that they be slightly smaller than the stitch that we already applied. So I'm clicked on this object right here. If I hold down my shift button, it allows me to move this down slightly in size all the way evenly around my design. I'm going to go ahead and make the color so I can see it as well and apply a run stitch. So this is physically going to tack my material down. We're going to do this to each one. So I'm going to make each one a tiny bit smaller by sizing it down by holding my shift button. I'm going to apply a run stitch to that. I'm just going to make it blue just so we can see what's happening here. So I'm making each shape slightly smaller and applying a run stitch to it. We'll do my last paw here, my last toe. Alright, and then I'm going to click and select each one of these. Action Apps Object and Auto Start and Stop. So now it is the most efficient that it can be. So now our machine is set to put down the initial tracing stitch. It's going to move the hoop forward, stop, allow us to put our material down. Then it's going to stitch out our tacking stitch, keeping the material down. So the last thing we need to do is to go ahead and add the steel stitch, which will be our third and final layer. So I'm just going to click on these. I'll just grab them all at once and I'm going to apply a steel stitch to it. Here, let's go to the Action Apps Object Properties. I'm going to increase the width of those. So you can see on my steel stitch here, I want to make sure that my two initial run stitches are kind of in between those, so I can set my inset here. I set it now to 70, so now they're much more in the middle. And now let's go to my Action Apps palette, which is this one right here. Let's go ahead and change that to an actual thread. Ooh, let's have a nice pink color. So now that will be an actual thread. So this is how you would set up then for an applique. So what this does, let's go back to our Object Manager. It is going to stitch out, it's going to trace our object on our garment on where we want the applique. Then it is going to stop sewing and move the hoop physically towards us and then stop completely, giving us time to physically place an applique material over our tracing stitch. Once the material is placed, you start your machine up again, and then this layer right here is our tacking stitch, which will tack our material down. It will actually apply the applique to the material, and then finally it's going to go ahead and put the steel border on top of it, which is going to clean it up and permanently put the tacking material down there, the applique material down there, and then you just simply remove the excess applique material. And so that is how you would do that within the Action Easy Stitch software.